Hey everyone, so this video is going to talk about how to add the values for your colors on the diagonal illusion drawing. So just to kind of get an idea of what our colors are, I'm going to pull out my red color. Remember, for analogous colors we want to use the colors that are next to it on the color wheel. So let's start off with our primary colors. So to the left of red we have yellow, and then to the right of red we actually have blue. And these three colors are our primary colors. So primary colors actually make up all the other colors on the color wheel. So I tried to actually arrange them on my desk in like a circle, but my desk just wasn't having it. So we're just gonna have to do it like a half circle. In between red and yellow is orange, because yellow and red make orange. And in between red and blue is purple, because red and blue make purple. Okay, so just looking at these colors here, I mean, yes, of course, the yellow and the blue make green, but looking at the colors that we have here, we can already see that according to like the red, some of the colors don't really like mix together, and so they don't match. And so between our red and our purple, we actually have our red purple. It's a combination, it's a tertiary color, our third group. So I took out that blue because it doesn't look as similar. And then I put in my red orange between my orange and my red. And I didn't even put in the yellow orange because you could already see right by then that the yellow just didn't fit. It wasn't very similar. It didn't look the same. So I've got these 5 colors here. And when we think about analogous, the word analogous actually means similar or related. And so we can't necessarily say that some of these colors aren't related, because primary colors make all the other colors, so they are related. But we want to focus on the similar ones. So just based off of what we can see here with our eyes, these 2 colors here on the right side of red don't really look very similar. In fact, the red, orange, and the orange almost look completely identical. So I actually pull away the red, purple, and the purple and focus just on those similar colors. And so this is what we call family of colors. And so we're gonna stick to a group of 3 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. And that's basically how you can tell which colors are analogous colors. Okay, so my focus color was red. And remember, if we're using that group of 3, we could go 2 to the right to make 3, 2 to the left to make 3, or 1 on either side. And so I actually chose to go 2 to the left. Remember, you want to stick to that group of 3, because if you go more than 3, then the colors start to change and transition into a different primary color. And when they start to change, then they're no longer similar. Okay? When I work with my family of colors, I like to actually like color out what my colors are so I could see them. And so here I'm just coloring out my red, coloring out my red orange, and I'm labeling them. R for red, O for orange, and this is my orange here. Okay. And so when we work with our analogous colors and we try to create values to make something look 3-dimensional, we always want to start off with our lightest color first. So whenever we're coloring and we're shading with color, we're adding value with color, we're going to start with our lightest color first. Then we'll work with our medium color, which is our second. And then of course we'll work with our darkest color, which will be third. Always work from lightest to darkest, because if you start with something light and mess up, you can try and fix it. But if you start with something dark, you can't cover up something that's dark. Okay, so I actually like to keep my colors in the order that I'm going to be using them, just so that way I don't forget. especially since they look so similar with the wrapping on the crayon. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is orange. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about how we're going to be coloring. So along these diagonal lines here, we're going to focus on creating values, darker values along this diagonal line that fade away as it comes to the center. And so don't shade with your pencil, please, because that'll just ruin your colors. Remember, we're using color to create value. So we need to create stripes. So the first thing we need to do is take our lightest color and create stripes. And I got really lazy and I started just coloring like all over the place, all different directions. Be very careful when you do this because you don't want your crayon to overlap, because what it's going to end up doing is giving you darker values of that color. And so just be careful, make sure you try to stay in the same direction or just don't overlap your crayon. Otherwise it's just going to make it darker. So I was going very quickly. I was trying to get this done fairly fast. And so I just went crazy. Take your time. So here I'm just going to label out the stripes that I want to color with the orange. And so I kind of sped up the video and I flash forwarded it to where everything was colored in. So once you've got all your stripes colored in, again, make sure that the color of that stripe is even. We're going to move on to our second color. So this second color here is what's going to start creating our darker value of our color. So again, along the edge of this diagonal line, we're going to shade from that line inwards towards our column. We want it to come inwards because that vertical line is going to be our darkest spot, and as it comes away from that line, it's got to fade away. So the pressure of your crayon has to change. So closer to the front of your crayon and it's going to be more pressure and it'll be darker. To the back of your crayon you'll have less pressure and it'll be lighter. So it just depends on how dark or light that you want this to be. I kind of tend to go towards like a medium. Once you get experience with your pressure and your colors and how you shade and you value, it becomes a lot easier to control how to hold your crayon or your pencil. And so here I'm just kind of shading it in. I had a real hard time getting these colors for some reason to just blend together. It didn't want to appear. And I think it's because these colors are too similar. And it happens to be just the box of crayons that I had. And so keep in mind too that when you're using your colors that they're not exactly the same. Sometimes one brand of color will say that it's orange, but then another brand of color, it's actually a yellow orange. So just be very careful. Make sure that you test your colors all the time. Okay, and so you can kind of see when I shaded away from that diagonal line, I didn't shade all the way in. I just kind of shaded in towards that section. And then we don't have split sections. I don't have like a medium and a light. It kind of fades gradually. Okay, and so now I'm going to add a little bit of shading here on the edge of my paper, only because I know in my mind that column isn't very wide and I don't want it to appear like it's flat. Alright, so now we're going to do this column here. This column, I'm not going to put as much pressure. I'm not going to make it as dark because this is the column that actually folds up. So if this were a cloth or a flag or some kind of blanket, this would be the piece that would be rolled up, whereas the other piece would be rolled down. And so the pieces that roll up, you don't want to color them as dark because they're the ones that are actually going towards the light. And when something goes towards the light, it actually gets lighter. So the other ones you can actually color a little bit darker. You can put more pressure. But for these columns here, you don't want to put as much pressure. You can even tell by the way I hold the crayon that I'm holding it towards the end of the crayon, so I'm not even putting that much pressure. In fact, my fingers are actually on top of the crayon, and I'm basically just using the weight of my hand to put the pressure on my crayon. And again, just following along with that diagonal line. Okay? So now we've finished our second section, our second color, so we're going to go on to our third. So my third color is red. Red is a very, very powerful color. So I have to be very careful, but I'm going to be coloring in the same direction, same thing, but just the darker color. Be careful with the reds, because red covers up orange and yellow and all of those colors like nothing. It's just like black. It eats up all of its colors. And here I'm kind of just explaining that if you want to get that nice even color, don't color with your fingertips, color with your wrist. And you'll actually start to notice my fingers don't even really like move. It's my wrist. My whole entire hand is moving across that paper in that diagonal motion. And so I'm just kind of pointing out here that with my red, I'm not coloring as far in. I'm only coloring about halfway in from what I did for my orange. The red orange, because we don't want it to completely cover up the red orange. We want those colors to gradually fade into the center of our column. So you can even kind of see I don't even really move that far in. I stay very close to that diagonal line. And you can already see, when I was making this, at first when I chose the color groups, I wasn't very happy because I don't really like orange. But as I started coloring it and as the red started like forming it actually looked really good. At the end of it, I just really wanted to go get some orange sherbet ice cream, because that's all I could think of when I was coloring this paper. So I'm just kind of going in and making sure that edge with the red is like super dark, making sure it's filled in completely along that edge, just so it gives it that extra boost. And it really does help. Be careful along the edge of your paper too, especially if you're coloring all the way across. You don't want to bend or rip your paper. Okay, so same thing as with that red orange. When we go over that next column, you don't want to put as much pressure, like super light. I barely even added any kind of red here. I really only added it just because. But see, again, with that corner, with the edge of the paper, be super careful. And again, just going back and making sure that edge, that diagonal line has the darkest area of my shading. And again, just going over my red, making sure that area is the darkest. Just double checking, making sure the corners and crevices of my shapes of my lines are good. Okay, so now that we've done all three colors, now we have to focus on trying to create this white stripe to appear 3D too. I personally don't like to use the darkest color. I like to use my middle color, because technically that middle color is what the shade is. That's your normal shade, whereas the lightest color is your color, and then the darkest color is like your absolute shadow. Okay, so here I'm just doing what I've been doing before. I'm just coloring along that diagonal line, but it's extremely light pressure, because we want those stripes to appear white and just have a value, have a shadow. So, literally my hand's moving completely across that paper, because I'm not coloring with my fingers. I'm actually now coloring with my elbow. So coloring with your elbow gives you a longer stroke of color. So you're going across the paper with your elbow and not so much your wrist or your fingers. So of course, elbow gives you the least amount of pressure, wrist gives you the medium amount of pressure, and then of course your fingers will give you the most. And so here again, you can already see it. I mean, I was really starting to like this drawing's colors when I started adding in this value. And so this one, since these are the columns that go down, that go away from us, I actually colored in a lot more of my value here. Probably more than I probably should have, but it actually really looked good. I started to have some fun. And so again, just going across that diagonal line, making sure that the diagonal line has the darkest value. Remember, we don't want it to be our darkest value color. We don't want it to be red. We just want it to appear like it is the darkest. So you can actually kind of see the red in the orange stripe value is actually starting to line up with the value that I just added. And again, going into this curve that actually bumps up towards the light, same thing, super light values, super light, because here we really don't even need that much. I'm just kind of like going over it so that way it doesn't appear to be a stop. It doesn't look like it has an angle. It looks like it has a curve, like it's rounded, because we want it to look like it's wavy. We don't want it to look like it has angles. Even though we've drawn out our lines, it should still appear to be smooth, like a smooth transition of our wave. So I actually, because I started to fall in love with this color, I actually took my lightest color and I just kind of like threw some light colors on top of it. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I mean, it made it pop. Even along the edge of my diagonal lines, it just like instantly added dimension to it. You don't have to, but you can. It's up to you. Okay, same thing with the red. I just kind of went and just super lightly along the line that I drew, my diagonal line that I drew, I added some of that red just to give it an extra boost of darkness, an extra boost of dimension. And be careful again with those edges of your paper. Okay, and so this is what it looks like. Remember, this is analogous colors, our family of colors that are related or similar to one another. So thanks for watching. Like my page, like this video, subscribe, and I hope you